Welcome to The Explainer. So today we're going to do something really cool. We're going to take Dale Carnegie's timeless advice on winning friends and influencing people and bring it right into our hyperconnected modern digital world. We're going to break down 3 core principles that can totally transform how you communicate both online and off. Let's dive in.
So let's start with a puzzle that I think we've all felt. We can connect with literally anyone, anywhere, instantly, right? But how often do we actually feel understood? It seems like we live in what's been called an era of hair trigger balances, where just one wrong word, one clumsy post can spiral completely out of control. So how do we make our interactions more meaningful? Well, the answer, surprisingly, starts with holding back.
All right, our first principle is what Carnegie calls burying your boomerangs. In other words, don't criticize, condemn, or complain. Now, that sounds so simple, doesn't it? But man, it is one of the hardest things to do, especially when you know you're right. There's actually a fantastic story about Abraham Lincoln that just perfectly captures why this is so important. Okay, so picture this. The Battle of Gettysburg is over. General Lee's Confederate army is trapped. President Lincoln orders his general, George Meade, to attack and finally end the war. But Meade hesitates, and Lee's army slips away. Lincoln was, to put it mildly, furious. He sat down and wrote this scathing, blistering letter to Meade, but he never sent it. Why? He realized that even though his criticism was 100% justified, it would only breed resentment, crush Meade's spirit, and ultimately make him a less effective leader. Lincoln understood this fundamental truth about people. Venting might feel good for a second. It gives you that momentary relief, but it's restraint that builds real, lasting influence. He knew that critical comments are like boomerangs. They feel so satisfying to throw, but they almost always come flying right back to hit you, damaging relationships and completely undermining your own authority. And in our digital age, whoa, those boomerangs are flying faster and farther than ever before. A single angry tweet, a careless Facebook post, it can have devastating, real-world consequences. We're talking people losing their jobs or getting hit with thousands of dollars in fines, all for a momentary lapse in judgment. The lesson here is crystal clear. In today's world, restraint isn't just a virtue, it's a superpower. Now, our second principle completely flips the script. See, it's not just about avoiding the negative stuff. It's about actively seeking out and highlighting the positive stuff. This one is all about giving honest and sincere appreciation. And trust me, those 2 words, honest and sincere, are everything. Carnegie makes this absolutely crucial distinction. This is not about cheap flattery. You know, the kind of stuff he called speaking from the teeth out. It's insincere, it's shallow, and people can see right through it. No, we're talking about genuine affirmation, which comes from the heart out. And that means you actually have to pay attention to people, to see the good in them, and then have the courage to acknowledge it. This quote, wow, it's from this incredibly moving story Carnegie shares called Father Forgets. It's about a father who just nitpicks his young son all day long for every little thing. But then, at the end of the day, the boy gives him this simple, unconditional hug goodnight. And in that moment, the father is just hit with this wave of remorse. That one small gesture made him see all the good, all the wonderful things about his son that he'd been completely overlooking. It's a powerful lesson in how affirmation can change everything. Okay, our third and final principle gets right to the heart of what it means to have real influence. And the secret is this: you simply cannot force people to agree with you. Pushing it doesn't work. The only way to truly influence someone is to connect with something they already desire. You have to arouse in them an eager want. There's a great little story about the philosopher Ralph Waldo Emerson that nails this idea perfectly. He and his son were trying with all their might to force a calf into the barn. They were pushing and pulling, but the animal just would not budge. Their housemate saw them struggling, and she walked over, calmly let the calf suckle her finger, and then just gently let it right into the barn. See? She didn't use force. She connected with the calf's basic desire. And don't for a second think this is just a cute story about a calf. This principle has world-changing power. I mean, look at Steve Jobs. When he came back to Apple and launched the iMac, he didn't just sell a computer. No way. He sold the idea of a digital hub, one single place for all your music, all your photos, your entire digital life. He tapped into a desire people didn't even know they had, and the result? Apple's stock price exploded by nearly 5,000%. He didn't push a product, he connected with a deep, unmet want. So this really all boils down to two very different ways of communicating, doesn't it? A monologue is all about what you want. It's conceited, it creates tension. A dialogue, on the other hand, is about discovering what they want. It's considerate, it builds trust, and it is infinitely more effective. So you have to ask yourself, which one is your default setting? Okay, so this has all been great in theory, but how do we actually put this stuff into practice in our daily digital lives? You know, in the DMs, the emails, the endless virtual meetings. It's all about being a little more intentional. So let's build a simple, practical playbook based on these three timeless principles. Honestly, it just comes down to taking a breath and asking the right questions. Before you fire off that post on social media, just pause and ask yourself, am I building up or tearing down? Before you hit send on that email, ask, does this message affirm the good in this person? Does it acknowledge their best moments? And before you kick off a meeting, think, what does everyone else in this virtual room truly want from this? That simple pause can completely change the game. You know, Carnegie taught that there's no such thing as a neutral exchange. You either leave someone a little better or a little worse. Every single interaction, every email, every text, every comment, it's an opportunity. It's a chance to connect, to affirm, and to influence someone in a positive way. So the only question left is, how will you use your next one?